Are there really more Playtime Company factories? Stay with me, because what Chapter 5 revealed could completely change the scale of how big the Poppy Playtime universe actually is. For several chapters now, many of us had been theorizing something that seemed pretty logical. Playtime Company couldn't possibly rely on just a single factory. The scale of the project was always far too massive. We're talking about biological experiments, genetic manipulation, industrial poppy cultivation, experimental technology, and the mass production of toys distributed all around the world. All of that requires resources, technology, transportation, research, and a massive supply chain, way too massive for everything to happen inside a single facility in Michigan. In fact, the game itself had already been leaving clues for quite some time. For example, the crates with Russian inscriptions we find inside the factory. There's also the mysterious tech company Beak Tech, a corporation located somewhere in Eurasia that may have collaborated with Playtime Co. in developing advanced technology, or possibly even research related to poppy cultivation. Even small details like the Varg Hauga poster found in Chapter 4, which included a caption written in Chinese. On their own, these details might seem insignificant, but when you start putting them together, they begin to paint a much bigger picture. Playtime Company seemed to have international connections. For a long time, all of this remained just theories, small hints suggesting that the company had something much larger operating behind the scenes. But Chapter 5 finally confirmed that those suspicions weren't far from the truth. And what's really interesting is that it doesn't just confirm the existence of other locations. It opens the door to expanding the story much further. This could directly influence future games, possible spin-offs set in other locations, new stories within the same universe, and even the upcoming Poppy Playtime movie, which could use these locations to explain some of the story's biggest mysteries from the very beginning. All of this starts with one of the most important notes found in Chapter 5, a document titled Shipping Manifest, July 1995. At first glance, it looks like a simple logistics record, but when we analyze it more carefully, it reveals something much bigger. The document mentions 3 projects associated with Playtime Company. The first is called Project Broader Horizons in the United States. The second is written in Japanese and translates to New Beginnings, located in Asia. And the third is called Project Garden World, Play Park, with no confirmed location. This tells us something very important. Playtime Company was expanding its operations to other locations. And we're not talking about small branches. The shipping manifest lists the materials that were being prepared for delivery: 10,000 poppy seeds, 20,000 irrigation pipes, organic compost, industrial water tanks, poppy harvesting components, and off-road forklifts. This isn't equipment used to manufacture toys. This is large-scale agricultural infrastructure, and this is where everything begins to connect with what we saw in Chapter 5. Because we know that poppy flowers are the base ingredient used to create poppy gel, the substance capable of regenerating tissue and enabling the creation of the experiments. What this document suggests is that Playtime Company was attempting to build entire cultivation systems in other parts of the world in order to produce poppies in industrial quantities. But there's one line in the document that makes this whole situation even more suspicious. Act delicately. We don't want Rich catching wind of this. Rich Levitz was the head of shipping at Playtime Company, a respected employee within the company, but also someone who openly criticized many of the company's internal decisions, which means these expansion projects were being carried out in secret, even from people inside the company. And this connects directly to an audio tape we find in the chapter, featuring a conversation between Eddie Ritterman and Leith Pierre. In the tape, they talk specifically about Rich. They're worried because Rich was becoming something like a people's champion inside the factory, an employee loved by the workers, and someone who might start digging too deeply into the company's secrets. But eliminating him would be a mistake. If he suddenly disappeared, everyone would become suspicious. So they decide on a very interesting solution. They promote him, they give him a raise, a higher position, more privileges, everything necessary to make the other employees believe he had sold his soul to the company. That way his reputation would be damaged and fewer people would trust what he said. Meanwhile, the secret shipments could continue without interference. Among the new locations mentioned, two are especially interesting. One of them is the Asian facility. During Eddie's conversation, it's directly mentioned that their friends in Tokyo are already progressing. This suggests that the Asian location wasn't just an idea on paper, it was likely already under construction, or possibly even partially operational. The other location is the mysterious Garden World, also known as Poppy Play Park. This place had already appeared earlier in the game. Back in Chapter 3, we can find a promotional poster advertising a new Playtime Company park, something that immediately brings to mind theme parks like Disneyland, a place where the company's characters could become attractions, shows, and tourist products. But if we know how Playtime Company operates, it's hard to believe that this park was meant to be just entertainment. It could have been the perfect cover, a massive location filled with children, where disappearances could easily go unnoticed among the huge crowds, a completely different setting from the original factory, and one that could even serve as the environment for future games in the series. However, there's one detail that completely changes the situation. In another note found in Chapter 5, we see an inventory report dated September 1995, and that inventory contains the exact same materials that were supposed to be shipped. Everything was still stored inside the factory, which means the shipments never actually left, and the reason is likely the same event that destroyed everything inside Playtime Company. The Hour of Joy happened just weeks after the July shipping manifest. The disaster inside the factory completely halted the operation. Personally, I believe these locations weren't necessarily factories identical to the one in Michigan. It's possible that Playtime Company was building something much more complex, a network of facilities distributed across different parts of the world, many of them operating without the Playtime Company name. Technology companies, cultivation centers, distribution hubs, everything connected, but without publicly revealing that they were part of the same project. This would explain why we find references to other languages inside the factory, both on crates and VHS tapes. It would also explain the presence of external companies like Beak Tech, and it could even justify expansion into places like Eurasia or Asia. For example, Tokyo might have functioned as a technological or commercial hub, a place where Playtime Company's toys and brand were distributed throughout the Asian market. But beneath that perfectly normal facade, there could easily have been a laboratory similar to the one in Michigan, a place where the experiments continued far away from public attention. And that raises a very interesting question. If Playtime Company was building facilities around the world, but everything collapsed after the Hour of Joy, did the other locations collapse as well? How many of them could still exist today? Could there be facilities in Russia, Germany, or even China? Let me know your theory in the comments. I always read them, and if you enjoyed this video, the one I'm leaving right here will definitely blow your mind. Keep watching.